On here, I'm just going to give a quick update on users and groups management in DataHub. So let me just present my screen here. So we've had some recent developments on the ingesting users and groups front. So this is something we've actually gotten quite a few questions about recently. So we're putting some effort into making sure our guidance is clear around how to ingest your users as well as your groups into DataHub's platform. On the recent developments, we've added a couple new ingestion sources. So this is batch ingestion sources to pull users and groups out of your third-party identity stores and bring them into DataHub, both from Okta as well as Azure AD. We've also added just-in-time user and group provisioning, which I'll get into detail on what that means in just a minute, but at a high level, this means that when people log in, we will provision them users and their corresponding groups if they do not already exist in DataHub system at login time. We've also made groups searchable via the UI, and we've added group members on the groups page itself, so you can easily understand who is in a particular group. So now I'm going to get into the details of just-in-time provisioning. This is a feature that's enabled via OIDC currently, but in a nutshell, when a user logs in over OIDC, we will check to see whether the user exists in the system already using a unique username that we extract from the OIDC profile that we get back from the identity provider. If that user doesn't exist, we'll go ahead and create them in DataHub system. And if we are able to extract a groups claim, which denotes which groups they're in, we'll also go ahead and create group objects for the groups that they're associated with, if they don't exist in DataHub already. In the coming release, this will be enabled by default, although there are flags, of course, to control the behavior and turn this off completely. And those are under auth OIDC just-in-time configs on DataHub front-end's container.
So I just want to quickly give an overview at a high level of like user and group management in DataHub. There's kind of two paths to seeding users and groups into DataHub. The first is what we call proactive, which is basically you're batch ingesting users and groups from some third-party system, some external system like Okta or AD. And we actually now provide the ability to validate that that user has already been sort of ingested at login time. So basically, you can go into Okta and maybe only ingest 20 users that you want to use as your beta users. And when they log in, they will either be allowed or denied based on if they're already in the system. So that's kind of the proactive approach. And then the reactive approach is what I just talked about. It's just-in-time ingestion at login time over OIDC. And actually, both of these today do require OpenID Connect for that authentication piece. If you'll hit next, Shashanka. So if this doesn't work for your organization, i.e. you're using SAML or LDAP would work better, something else, please do let us know. We're always trying to get feedback about this particular thing because it's a domain that's kind of different between a lot of organizations. And we do it one way, we use OIDC, but everyone does it a slightly different way. So we definitely want feedback to understand if there's a better way to kind of pull in your organization's users and groups into DataHub and seed them. Okay, next slide. So what's on the horizon? Well, we'd actually like to add sort of an admin console in the UI that allows you to manage users and groups. So do things like creating new groups through the UI, removing groups that you may have ingested or may have been provisioned, and then manage group membership. So actually be able to add users to groups, remove users from groups. And then finally, we'd like kind of fine-grained user state management, the ability to kind of activate and deactivate users that you may have ingested from a third-party source or who may have been provisioned at login time. So that's what we're working on now. We also have a user and group onboarding guide coming. So once that user and groups management UI lands, that'll kind of finish this track for now. And we'll kind of sum that up with this user and group onboarding guide, which will hopefully be very clear about how we can get users and groups into DataHub. And then finally, we want to build out a couple more batch connectors. There's been requests for things like Keycloak and things like Google Identity, some of these other third-party kind of users and group stores. So let us know if you have other connectors you'd like to see. We're definitely interested in taking requests there. So that's pretty much it. I think we can move on.
Awesome. So as usual, we have a lot of integration improvements pretty much across the board. A few callouts would be Redash. We'll talk about that later. Kafka Connect, we've added support for JDBC sources as well, not just the Debezium one that was there before. And for MongoDB, we added some small tweaks to handle really large schemas that were coming out of the schema inference system. So now, DataHub is not going to crash on you if you have 13,000 fields in your schema, like some people do. All right. Moving on the developer track, we are going to talk about performance metrics. I'm not going to discuss that too much here. We've added a lot of improved documentation for ingestion sources. So if you go check out our ingestion docs, our source docs are much improved. Thanks to John and Kevin for doing that. And so as new sources come on board, we have a pretty nice way of adding them to the documentation now.